And so he's like pointing at the board game of life. He's laughing at it because he's not a player.
Those urges are not going away, no matter how nice or mean you are.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean it.
Sorry doesn't cut it, George.
And now for some lessons from the screen.
Welcome back to Salty Saints. My name is Hayden Holm. I'm joined today by my brother Tanner, and we are doing a deep dive into Nice Guy Syndrome through George McFly. So we're going to be watching a handful of scenes and figure out what is a nice guy, what are the behaviors of a nice guy, and what did George do to overcome Nice Guy Syndrome? Because I think it's one of the things that is holding the men of the church back more than anything else. But without further ado, let's open up that first clip and dive right into it.
Just perfect.
I can't believe you loaned me a car without telling me it had a blind spot. I could have been killed.
Now, Biff, I never noticed that the car had any blind spot before when I would drive it. Hi, son.
But what are you, blind?
Hey, quick, can you pause? Can you pause real quick?
Yeah. Oh, man.
Okay, all right. So,
Hi,
so
son.
there's George
That
McFly.
makes so sad.
It is. It's
Every
incredibly
time.
sad. And anytime that I do spirit voice in the church, my spirit voice mimics George McFly. So if you've ever noticed on the little bumper of like cultural call outs of like, we sure don't appreciate that, it's George McFly. All right. Because
Every time.
so this is the introduction to George McFly. We see him just getting yelled at. And this is I guess this is one of the MOs for a nice guy, is that he gets peed on by pretty much everybody in his network. And he takes it. And he just keeps taking and taking and taking. But the thing is, he believes that by being nice and smoothing the waters, that he will earn everybody's affection and stuff like that. When in reality, everyone just starts pitying him more than anything because he doesn't have a spine and people can take advantage of that. And that's certainly what we see right here with Biff.
Well, yeah, I mean, Biff is blaming him for being a drunk driver. You know, like he got wasted,
Right.
He crashed George McFly's car and said it's your fault. And he pushes back like weakly, you know, like, I never saw that blind spot before. Instead of being like, no, you're a jerk. You wrecked my car. I should be the
Right.
one that's upset. But it's funny because it got so much more uncomfortable for George McFly the second his son came into the house and saw the encounter. And his son's disappointed in him, you know? But like, so George, he feels it inside. He feels like, I shouldn't be this nice, but I can't help it. You know, like he's very conflicted over it. And he feels like he's losing his own battle here.
Right.
So he's feeling resentment and also feeling, belittled and frustrated in a situation where he should be the one filled with righteous indignation, right? He should be the
Right.
one angry.
Yeah, those roles should be reversed. He should be the one screaming at Biff saying, what did you do to my car? Like, what do you think would happen if you were drinking and driving at the same time? Like, what's the matter with you? And then he sees his son come in and he should be proud. He should be saying like, hey, look at me. This is how a man handles things, but instead Marty just looks at him and he can see the disappointment. He can see that everyone else is disappointed in him. And all he can do about it is just say, hi. You just hear you hear his spirit just leave his body when you do that. And
like, oh
just
no.
Props to the actor because he did such a phenomenal job just encapsulating that spirit just leaving his body. Hi, son.
Hi, son. Yeah.
So
and Biff can see it too. He knows. Everyone's well aware of the situation and how pinned George McFly is to the floor,
Oh, totally. And so real quick, Dr. Robert Glover, so he wrote a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. And so he actually identifies nice guys as men who seek approval, avoid conflict, and suppress their own needs to please others. So this is the type of person that we're talking about. This is someone that you've seen in your elders quorum. This is someone that you've seen at church, at home. This is somebody that you should be, if you were raised in Utah like we were, that you have seen everywhere. Like, I've seen George McFly all over the church. You see him in leadership positions. You see him all over the place on a local level.
And I don't know if it's like, I don't know why the church produces so many nice guys. It might just be like a weird corrupted extrapolation of humility and meekness doctrine, like this teaching
Yeah.
of being humble and turning the other cheek and things like that. I think it must be just kind of some weird outgrowth from that, but this is not it. This is not what we want to see.
Well, I think it's the suburbanization of the masculine spirit. They don't really know what to do with it, so they're just like, well, let's just make it as pleasing to everybody as we can, because we've got to live in an HOA together, and we got to make sure that we play nice
Right.
together. So we're gonna smooth the waters, and so I think that could be it. I would be open to the comments. Where do you think nice guy syndrome developed? Like, why is it here? And comment away on that, but let's keep going.
But what are you, blind, McFly? It's there. How else do you explain that wreck out there?
Biff, can I assume that your insurance is going to pay for the damage?
My insurance. It's your car. Your insurance should pay for it. I want to know who's going to pay for this. I spilled beer all over when that car smashed into me. Who's going to pay my cleaning bill? And where's my reports?
Well, I haven't finished those up yet, but I figured since they were due till
Hello? Hello? Anybody home?
Oh.
Huh? Think, McFly. Think. I gotta have time to get them retyped. Do you realize what would happen if I handed my reports in your handwriting? I'll get fired. You wouldn't want that to happen, would you? Would you?
Of course.
Okay,
not.
stop.
Want that to happen.
Okay, did you see that? So right there for a second. So he's getting completely railroaded by Biff, right? And that's what nice guys do. So nice guys, they feel like they need to earn their love, they need to earn appreciation and stuff like that. So they're like, well, let me just being nice will earn me that love, and it can lead into a very manipulative place. But you look at what he's doing when Biff says, "You wouldn't want that to happen to me, would you?" And did you notice what he said, or rather, what he didn't say?
Well, that's the thing.
He tried to push back with silence. He was just like, And then he said,
Yeah.
would you? And he was like, well, and then he just defaulted back into the nice guy script. So that was like a feeble attempt at saying, I'm trying to push back. And so that's what they don't say is sometimes what they actually are trying to communicate. That's him saying, like, I want to say something right now, but by not saying it, I won't cut against the nice guy in me.
Yeah, well, I think that was like a paralysis moment of like a wrestling match between the id and the ego. Like he just that silence was, there's a part of me that wants to like blow up right now. And that's like for a split second that took control, but not long enough to actually speak. So that, his higher level thinking just crashed into that, and they just locked gears for a second. Like, because he's like, I want to say, I don't care about, you should get fired. You deserve that. But at the end, his fear locked in and he just like seized up. And then Biff had to snap him out of it by grabbing his tie or whatever, So it's very interesting that the mask started to slip a little bit, before he was able to shove it back up.
Happen. Now look, I'll finish those reports on up tonight, and we'll run them on over first thing tomorrow. All right?
Hey, not too early. I sleep in Saturday. Oh, McFly, your shoes untied.
Oh.
Don't be so gullible, McFly. Got the place fixed up nice, McFly. I have your car towed all the way to your house, and all you got for me is light beer? What are you looking at, butthead? Say hi to your mom for me.
I know what you're going to say, son. And you're right. You're right. But Biff just happens to be my supervisor, and I'm afraid I'm just not very good at confrontations.
The car, Dad. I mean, he wrecked it. He totaled it. I needed that car tomorrow night, Dad. I mean, do you have any idea how important this was to me? Do you have any clue?
I know, and all I can say is I'm.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that with that one, it's so telling, like the way that Biff, first of all, just feels like completely okay with being able to, insult George McFly in front of his son, but also like call out his mom, and George's wife. like kind of
Yeah.
pseudo hit on her while he's leaving after taking a beer from his fridge, you know? Like that's just insane to me.
Like completely emasculated him, you know, and Biff
Yeah.
represents like the toxic masculine spirit. So he's the one over there that's like, hey, I'm going to use my brute strength to get whatever I want. Whereas people that are agreeable, people that are overly agreeable struggle with that, with those personality types, because they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to handle that, you know, because they avoid conflict like the plague. And so they're just like in their conflict avoidance. They're just like, I don't know. Let me just keep smoothing the waters, and those people can just run right over them. And it's interesting that you look at what George is wearing too. Like he's clean shaven. He's got the white shirt and tie on. He looks like the average, great, fantastic guy, you know? And that's what the nice guy syndrome is all about. It's all about putting on appearances. Jordan Peterson mentioned, so he correlates excessive agreeableness, a big 5 personality trait, with people-pleasing tendencies and poor boundary setting. So you can see George struggles to set boundaries, not only with his family, but also with Biff, especially with his coworkers, and that bleeds right into his personal life. So Biff wasn't only taking advantage of him at work, but he was also able to just run into his personal life and start just emasculating him in front of his family, just crossing as many borders as he can.
Which, I mean, like, this is very prevalent in the church, right? And like in the men in the church, I should say. And it's something that like runs in our family too, you know? Like I still struggle with some of this over agreeableness like on a daily basis, you know? It's a prevalent issue. Like it is affecting way more men than we realize, I think. So it's pretty stunning.
Okay. All right, hold on. Let's pause real quick. Okay.
Oh man.
Can you rewind this to just a smidge? Just rewind it to where he's pointing at the TV. Do you see this?
Yeah, let's see.
So this is interesting. So the filmmaker did an amazing job with this. All right. So right there, just leave it right there. Perfect. So look at this. Look at his household. So if you look at the house, there's just clutter all over the place. Having a cluttered and a messy home is kind of like an externalization of your internal state of being. You can tell that there's just so much going on in his mind that he's not addressing, and it just kind of builds up. It just random clumps all over his house. Look where his finger is actually pointing, though. Originally, I thought it was pointing to the TV, but if you actually look, it's pointing at the board game over there. And if you zoom in on that, which I don't know that we can, but if you can't see it, it's pointing at the board game of life, which is really interesting. So George is pointing towards the board game of life, and he's actually laughing in that like nice guy laugh, you know, like that. And so he's like pointing at the board game of life. He's laughing at it because he's not a player of life. He's just like a passive watcher of life. He just kind of watches it from the sidelines, and he just kind of makes comments. And also, I want to point out real quick, just look at everybody's drinks, because the drink that everyone has in front of them tells you a lot about their character and who they are. So keep playing, but notice George has a glass of milk. And pause. Okay, yeah. So zoom back, scroll back to where he's sitting with his family. Like let's get the look of his family on him. Right there, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that pretty much sums it up. I mean, look at the slack-jawed, like, disappointment. Yeah, you know, the resentment over here, just like stunned resentment. You know, like, I can't believe I hate you this much. You know, is what she's thinking at the moment. And then confusion.
Totally.
So you have just confusion. Like, what? How is this man happy? You know? And what we're missing here, what I missed originally is that I thought he was just working because he always works, but no, his whole dinner, his whole evening is fixing Biff's reports that you know, from the previous scene. So he just shoved his whole family dinner to the other side of the table to start working some more because Biff came home drunk, wrecked his car, and said, "You need to fix those reports." So like the ultimate slap in the face, and he's accepting it, and he's, you know, pushing his family out because of it, you know, in order to make things happen for Biff.
Notice that Biff also said like, "Hey, I sleep in on Saturdays." So this is a Friday night. This is like typically date night. This should be a night where he clocks out. He's off of work. He should be tuned into his family. And instead, he's doing Biff's extra work because Biff was partying too hard. So if you look at the drinks here, so everyone's got his children have like Diet Pepsi. George has milk. And what does his wife have in front of her? Lorraine. She's got
some alcohol.
She's got some alcohol in front of her, but also back on the counter. So you can see part of like the clutter back
that
there.
Vodka?
Yeah.
Nice.
So like
she's hitting it hard.
She's in a medicated state. She is, I think, so disappointed with how her life ended up that she has to medicate herself. And because of that, she is tuning out of the family. George is completely tuned out of the family. The kids don't know what to do at this point. They're just sitting there slack-jawed. They're just like, well, I hope we can figure out something. But they're basically living their own lives. Everyone is disconnected. And I don't know if you noticed this, but the oldest son actually started laughing alongside his dad. So I think part of Lorraine's look of disappointment there is seeing that her sons are becoming the man that drove her to medicate through alcohol, right? Like that's right. That could be a huge source of disappointment. It's just like, okay, I thought I was going to be able to raise some real men, but I'm just going to raise the type of men that drove me to drinking. And I mean, Jordan Peterson talks about how adventure isn't a substitute for alcohol. Alcohol is a substitute for adventure. And so you can see that she's substituting the adventure of being married to a real man who is going to fight for his family, protect, provide, and preside in a righteous way. She's had to settle, and she's just had to live with the substitute of a man. And the only way that she's been able to do that is just numbing herself out to it.
100%. Yeah. It's pretty stunning.
Now, the other interesting takeaway, if you zoom back to her when she first, scroll back to her when she was first bringing the cake out, if you look at what's behind on the counter, you can see instant mashed potatoes. And if you look at the dinner and you look at what George is eating cereal, and he's got a glass full of milk. And so milk could be a symbol that Lorraine has infantilized him, that she is basically a mother figure to this man who has to cradle him and coddle him and basically live with the fact that he's a nice guy. that he gets pushed over.
And and it could also, this might be a stretch, but it could also show that like Lorraine's not interested in like trying, and maybe that's just because she's disappointed in George, or maybe it's because she's also walking all over him. Like he's not gonna clap back at me if I don't make a decent dinner, like he doesn't care. Nobody cares. It's like so he just, he'll sit down, he'll just drink his milk and eat his cereal like he does every night, and it doesn't matter what I make, so I'm just gonna make some instant potatoes for the rest of us and some rolls from the store and just be good,
everyone is just eating like frozen dinners, so everyone's eating just like this frozen meal that didn't take any thought, it didn't take like any time to prepare, it's just slapped in front of them, it's very lazy, it's just like, okay, boom, here you go. So you're also seeing that there's like a failure on the side of Lorraine as well. Like she's not actually able to nourish the family. And I think this is a result of nice guy syndrome, is that it goes back into that happy wife, happy life conversation where the husband is taking on too much. He's trying to make his wife happy. And in doing so, he's disabling her from actually fulfilling her responsibilities well. So this happens when you've got moms that are just kind of laying around all day, that are complaining about the kids, that are just saying like, oh, let me just turn on the screens for you, give you your tablet, give you this, give you that, and the father figure is kind of checked out. You're just like, oh, well, you're doing your best. Just as long as you do your best, live, laugh, love, and you'll be all right. Oh, you're doing the best you can, instead of confronting her and saying, no, you need to take care of my children. You need to, and this is what Ryan Mills was talking about, the Relief Society, and his word said, I want men that are going to lead out, men that are going to maybe push back. If he sees the TV dinners, if he sees that the mom's checked out, if he sees that his wife is medicated through alcohol, that he says, no, we're not going to do this. We're going to step up. You're going to do your rules. I'm going to do my rules, and I'm going to try and do my best to preside, protect, and provide for this family.
Yeah, when it comes to situations like that, when you feel like the wife isn't pulling her weight, I think that you can almost always like to take an extreme ownership approach from Jocko Willing. I think if you reflect, you'll find that it's, there's always something that you can change to help her and support her in that. And then increase accountability for all involved. Right.
Right.
So I think that just doesn't happen out of the blue where wives just turn off and say, I don't know, I'm just going to be a lazy person now and not do any of those things. Right. Most of the time it's because their husband has off balance somewhere, and has caused a shift in the family that is wearing and tearing on everyone involved. So I think that, either way you cut it, the husband needs to step up and step out into, and to lead.
Well,
and
the milk could also be symbolic. The drinks could be symbolic of their current mental states and emotional states. So the milk could represent that George has never matured emotionally. He has not matured spiritually. And the alcohol is just a form of escapism for Lorraine. So and it could be because she married a man who just did not fully mature, who did not reach manhood, who just kind of stayed where he was and was just like, all right, I just need to be a boy,
which is it is a infraction upon the covenant of marriage, I think, to not grow, right? Because when you marry someone, you're not marrying just who they are right now. That's a promise to grow together. And when you don't grow, you're putting deep strain on your marriage, right? Which is what George McFly is doing.
Right. So he's saying, I need to be that. I need to hit the pause button. I just need to be righteous. Kind of back what you were saying about endure to the end. I just need to hit a certain spiritual level that I hit maybe at the age of like a deacon or a teacher or whatever, and then I just hit the pause button and I just try my best to be good and to please everybody for the rest of my life. And that'll be great. That'll be good enough for me,
I mean, yeah, because if you look at George McFly on paper, he checks all the boxes. He is hardworking. He is kind. He's providing, and he is, he laughs and he's jovial. So on paper, he's a nice guy and he checks all the boxes for what should be a good guy to be with. Right. But then you see reality and it's like, oh man, you're kind of screwing this up. You're not quite enough yet. You need to just tweak it just a little bit.
And he's taking his family with him so you look at his son, he's like settling for, like, he's an adult. He's settling for a position at like a fast food restaurant. He's wearing almost identical clothing to George McFly. So it kind of shows you that like his next step in life is probably going to be taking on the middle manager shirt there and, getting a tie and keeping the watch and stuff like that. But he already has the same sense of humor as George McFly, which seems to indicate that he has viewed that as the peak of masculinity. So it's warped
following
his
that
perception
example
of what masculinity should be.
I introduced you to Lorraine. What are you writing?
Stories. Science fiction stories about visitors coming down to Earth from other planets.
Get out of town. I didn't know you did anything creative. Let me read some.
Oh, no. I never let anybody read my stories.
Why not?
Well, what if they didn't like them? What if they told me I was no good? I guess that would be pretty hard for somebody to understand.
No, not hard at all.
Let's pause it.
Yeah, so I think with that scene, which is really interesting, is that oh, there we go. I think with that scene, which is really interesting, is that it's a totally, like, he has these hidden talents that his son never knew existed. And why did his son never know about them existing? Is because he was afraid. He was afraid of rejection, right? He's afraid of people saying he's not good enough. Which, I mean, with how they with how they phrase it and everything like that, it really reminds me of the parable of the talents, right? And especially like hiding your light under a bushel. Like you're commanded to share your talents and to share your experiences and your skill sets with people. And he has decided not to do that. And because of that, he is not known to be a good writer. He's not blessed the lives of the people around him with his skills and talents there. And his children don't respect him, right? There's a loss of respect there.
Well, it's not lost on me that in order for Marty to fix his family, he has to go back into their past. And so you look at that from like a psychological perspective, it's like, there are a lot of things that shape us in childhood and in our teenage years that that some people are even unconscious of. Some people don't even know shaped them. And so you look at George and he said, I don't share my stories with anybody. And you look at like what a story is, and like people use stories to relate to each other. People use stories to connect with each other. It's through somebody's story that you're able to see like their weaknesses. They have to be a little bit vulnerable. And so you see there's some hardcore repression going on and this fear of vulnerability. So he's keeping everybody at arm's distance. And because he does that, people don't get to know him. So his son actually had to go back in time to actually figure out, like, wait a second, you actually like writing books? Like, you have this hobby? I didn't know that. And it's like, well, yeah, because his father never told him about that. He kept him at arm's length his entire life. And so that is another symptom of the nice guy syndrome, is this emotional repression, this fear of vulnerability. It's keeping everybody surface level and shallow. It's just like, it's kind of like Dr. Marvin a little bit from What About Bob? When he tells everyone, I don't get upset, but he's actually getting, furious. Bob is driving him crazy. And we'll do another one on What About Bob, but he his refusal to risk rejection becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's something that he doesn't understand, is that he's like, okay, well, if I put myself out there, I might face rejection, and I can't handle rejection. So I'm just going to keep that to myself, which makes everybody reject him. Biff rejects him. His wife rejects him. His children reject him. And so it's a really horrible, sad place that nice guys can end up if they do not speak out, become vulnerable, share their story, and risk a little bit, which takes some courage. It does take a courage to let your light shine. But if you keep that under a bushel, then people don't get to know you, and it'll keep them in the dark about who you 100%. Are and your actual feelings, which can encourage more repression. Okay, let's pause real quick. Awesome. So this is when Marty first goes back. He's trying to figure out what's going on. He saw his dad at the diner. He goes running, looking for his dad. He can't find him. He sees his bike, and now he's like, hey, what's going on? So we see this is like the first snapshot that Marty gets of his father in the past. Okay, keep playing. There we go.
He's a peeping Tom.
All right. Yeah, so let's pause here. Okay,
man.
This Dr. Glover covers this in his book. He says the classic nice guy often represses healthy masculine desire, believing it to be evil or shameful.
Yeah, because those urges are not going away, no matter how nice or mean you are, right? So I think that what drives him to essentially be a peeping Tom, and which is the same driver for pornography nowadays, right?
It totally is.
It's a way to access those desires and urges without fear of rejection or without confrontation, because pursuing women and dating and marriage, that all requires levels of confrontation and risk, and this is a risk-free approach to trying to get those desires out of your system, right? Which
it goes
is a
back
total
to
corruption of what it should be.
Where totally agree. It goes back to the previous clip where he's talking about he can't handle rejection. He's too afraid of rejection. He's too afraid to tell people his story. So he has to keep them through a glass. He has to keep them through a screen, which means this is him just being a spectator of the game of life, right? He doesn't know how to play the game. He doesn't know how to engage. And because of that, it drives him to the outskirts. And we see this reflected in so many young men there was a professor that Chanel had once at BYU, Idaho, who was serving as a bishop. And he said, every single priest in my quorum who has a smartphone also has an addiction to pornography. And I think that speaks volumes on multiple levels. First of all, it shows that kids, I think, are given too many freedoms with smartphones. You know, it's like, yeah, we got to limit
100%.
smartphone usage, screen time. Yeah, it's terrible because it gives them opportunities to be that George McFly figure. It gives them that opportunity to say, I'm going to be a spectator of life. I'm too scared to go out there and try and do it the proper way. So I'm going to try and just do it this way because it's easier. But on another level, it also indicates that I think there is a subculture, this toxic nice guy culture that is being perpetuated where people do view those feelings as being associated with shame and guilt, and they don't know the proper way to channel them. They don't know. And so these cultural traditions, these cultural teachings that we're giving them, like, oh, you know, we don't talk about that. It's very taboo. You know, smooth the waters, be overly agreeable. We don't talk about anything like that. Oh, you know, then that can really mess up a lot of guys, and it can force them into these kind of behaviors because those, like you said earlier, those urges, they're not going anywhere. And so they're going to drive you down one path or another. And so as leaders, I think that's a call to action to say, we need to maybe revisit some of the cultural teachings that we're giving these young men. I think we need to change the way that we talk and that we act and that we behave around sexual topics and quote unquote taboo topics. Because if we don't, we'll continue to produce nice guys who become like the peeping toms of their day.
Who are you?
My name is Darth Vader. I am an extraterrestrial from the planet Vulcan.
Mom! Dad!
Silence! My heat ray will vaporize you if you do not obey me.
Okay, I surrender.
You, George McFly, have created a rift in the space-time continuum.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean it.
Sorry doesn't cut it, George. The Supreme Klingon hereby commands you to take the female unit known as Baines Lorraine to the place called Hill Valley High School, exactly 4 Earth cycles from now. That's this Saturday night, George.
You mean you want me to take Lorraine to the dance?
Affirmative.
I don't know if I can do that. Okay, all right, I'll do it. I'll take Lorraine to the dance, just please.
Now close your eyes and see me no more.
Oh,
All right, let's pause it there. Yeah.
That's good. That's the extended scene. I've never seen that one before until now. So,
Well, I'm
yeah,
glad
that
we're
was
bringing
pretty
it
good.
up because this is the transformational point for George McFly, where he leaves the domain of nice guy and he begins his assertiveness training. And this is, I think Marty McFly represents the call to action. So Marty is saying, all right, Darth Vader, you know, this extraterrestrial is calling him out. He's saying, you need to leave your toys behind and become a man. And you need to find a woman and make a home together. You know, and that's going to
Yeah.
start with his dance. And so I think there are a lot of parallels that we could draw from that. But what do you see?
I think it is interesting. I think there are a lot of like this makes a great metaphor for religion and for, you know, a spiritual, you know, coming of age experience, because he looks back at his comics, right? Like, I've been reading about this my whole life and now it's in front of me, calling me out. just like a lot of us read our scriptures all our whole lives, and then we have that moment where we become truly converted, right? Which urges us to act on our faith. So that's what he's doing now, right? Like it's storybook becoming real life, and he's saying, "Oh, I actually, I'm compelled to act because my belief is made sure here," right? So I think that, and it's changing him, because he is now more afraid of Darth Vader than he is of taking Lorraine to the dance, right? Like it is more important to him to follow the words of this being, this alien who just appeared, and the importance of his mission became clear, and now he's ready to overcome his obstacles.
Yeah. So he's ready to become a real boy. He's going to put away all the childish things, and he's like, all right, okay, this is scary. I'm going to step into the unknown. I'm going to risk this rejection. I'm going to embrace my fears and try and follow this command. And it's not because he loves Lorraine, and it's not because of anything outside of his fear and respect for this being that he has read about and that he venerates. I mean, he writes science fiction. It's his true hobby. This is the call to action here. What do you think this could represent for nice guys in the church?
Well, I think that every guy is going to have this moment in their life at some point where somebody or something tells them that they need to be a man. It's like it's time to become a man. I'm interested. I think people should leave it in the comments, that moment, if they remember it. Share with us what that moment was where like it clicked for you and you said, "Oh, I need to be a man now." Right? I feel like a lot of people are going to say it's right around when they start having children, right? When their wife is pregnant and like there's a child coming on the way, you have that switch that turns on and says, "Shoot, I am now responsible for a family, not just a wife." Right?
I need to step up. Yeah.
100%. So that's the moment that we're seeing here, is the I need to step up moment.
Totally. And it's also really interesting that this is his son that is calling him to the adventure of his life, right? So it's his posterity approaching him in this kind of mystical way, this ethereal way that's like, hey, get out, you need to get out there, you need to step up and be a hero.
Yeah, it's like Jordan Peterson's, rescuing your father from the belly of the whale. Like
that's right,
in a much more fun way. So.
Come on. Hey, you! Get your damn hands off!
Oh, I think you got the wrong call, McFly.
George, help me.
Just turn around, McFly, and walk away. Are you deaf, McFly? Close the door and beat it.
No, Biff. You leave her alone.
All right, McFly. You're asking for it, and now you're going to get it.
Stop it! He'll break his arm! He's gonna break his arm! Biff, leave him alone! Let him go! Let him go!
Okay, let's pause. Awesome. Okay, so let's recap real quick. So his assertiveness training kicks in. He approaches Biff. He's terrified because it's Biff. He thought it was going to be Marty. He thought he was going to be like just pretending. He thought this was going to be like LARPing, like they were just cosplaying this dangerous situation, where he was going to be a hero. He finds himself in an actual difficult situation, and all of his fears are culminated right in that moment. So he has like the fear of rejection, the fear of shame from the woman that he's supposed to take to the dance. He's got Biff, the fear of embracing like the toxic masculine force in his life, and so all of them are contained in that one moment. And we see that he's able to confront them. that at that time he's like, okay, I'm going to stand up. I'm going to default to my training. And it almost immediately backfires. And so he gets himself into this compromised position where he's just like, his life starts falling apart. And he's just like, oh, no, I'm sure he had a lot of doubts going through his mind at that point. While Biff was trying to break his arm. What do you think the moment was that made him snap out of that fear and embrace that confidence and that courage that was within him?
Well, I think that when I think this happens a lot with men when you see like you can kind of, you haven't hit it yet, but you see rock bottom. You like, I can see it down there, and I can probably survive that. And no, if you know that, then your fears can kind of dissipate a little bit. So it's like it's not so bad here. I think another thing that's really interesting is that if Biff is the epitome of toxic masculinity, it's very interesting to me that he was able to take his masculinity and contain Biff, right? Like that's what ended up happening is like he took some control and some power and he used it to restore balance in his own self, but also in the community around him, which is very fascinating. But you can see it change as he saw his wife, his future wife, fall on the ground, and he saw Biff laughing at him. He had this phenomenal, like, momentary change when he realized that it is better to act out than to cower. Right? There's a children's book that I read to the kids often. It talks about this little monster who's scared and it hears noises in its house and it's underneath the covers with a flashlight. And then it talks about how, what was happening outside. It was better to look out rather than to stay in, right? It became easier to throw off the covers and face whatever's coming in than to just tuck and cower as it got closer and closer. And I think it's that momentary shift for George McFly. It's like, I have to. There's a point of no return here, and he saw that and he saw his future in both ways. And he made the risky move to try and hit Biff, and it worked out.
It did. And it speaks volumes. First of all, it goes back to what you were saying. This is the part where George McFly becomes the integrated or the whole man. It shows you that the integrated man will win out in the end over the unintegrated man, because Biff is unintegrated as well, right? Like, he does not have a feminine bone in his body. He hasn't embraced that side. George has too much feminine in him, and so he's able to integrate that masculine spirit. And it was interesting because I like that you pointed that out. It wasn't until he saw Lorraine get pushed over that the masculine spirit within him kind of woke up, that he realized, like, I need to protect, I need to preside right in this moment here, and I'm the only one that can do it. And his primary motivator switched from fear to courage. So the pain of acting and being courageous at that moment became less than the pain of fear and allowing people to run over him. And so he was just like, okay, I need to step up and I need to, as Jordan Peterson would say, confront the dragon and get the gold. Share it with the community. And so I think that's exactly what we're seeing here, is that George McFly became the integrated man. And that is, I guess, the main takeaway for Nice Guys in 2025 is like, hey, confront your fears, confront the dragon, get the gold. That's the whole message contained in this one scene right here. You can replace Biff for those. This is I'll flip my tie on this one, but I do believe that there are a lot of brethren out there that fall into the nice guy syndrome, and that their wives begin to stray into like social media. They start becoming dissatisfied with their marriage. They get onto social media. They receive validation through terrible content out there that says like, hey, focus on your happiness. You be you, you do you. And that starts to compromise their family. And so the integrated man is the man that's going to stand up to those ideologies and say, no, I'm not going to allow you to have your way with my wife and my family. I'm going to push back. I'm going to lead out in righteousness and truth.
Absolutely. And I think that for those people who are wondering if they're fully integrated or not, or if they have similar issues, talk to your kids if you have them, because your kids are very honest, and they will, just like Marty does for George, like they will act as a catalyst for your change if you if you open your eyes to how they perceive you. Like that's a very powerful thing, because your children are watching all the time. They're absorbing every moment like a sponge, and they know and they observe and remember way more than you understand, like way more than you're cognizant of. So if you have kids, reflect on your relationship to them and how they're perceiving you, and use that as a way to activate that inner George McFly that needs to come out and take, command of the situation and lead your family appropriately.
Pay attention to Lorraine's face and her expression.
Are you okay?
Okay, let's pause it. So did you see that? Did you see that? So you contrast that face of Lorraine with the very beginning face where she's just like throwing them back. She can't stand her life. She's disappointed. Everything she thought that was exciting and interesting in life has gone. She realized that she had taken on an infant, instead of a leader in her life that could help her navigate the difficulties of life. This shows you that women they're not attracted to passivity, but they're not attracted to agreeableness. They're not attracted to people that just want to smooth the waters and say nice things just to keep them happy. They're attracted to that strength, to a tempered and a controlled strength that says, you know what, I'm not going to allow anyone else to dictate what my family believes. We're going to figure this out for ourselves, and I'm going to try and do the work to make that happen.
100%. And you can see in this scene, the pride that Marty has in his dad, right?
Yeah.
And that's the real prize. That's what every father should be looking for, is the sign of respect from his wife in Lorraine's eyes, and then pride and respect from his children. That's really all you want on your deathbed.
Yeah.
That's all you need. That's all you're going to take with you. So I think go ahead.
It doesn't only stop there. We see this reflected in the community as well. So I'm really glad that you see like those people that are like, who's that guy? That's George McFly. If you paid attention at the very opening scene that we played, the neighborhood that Marty skates into, it's filled with litter. It's filled with clutter. Mm-hmm. So it represents a little bit of George's state of being. And at the end, after the integrated George takes control, you see that his neighborhood is actually cleaned up. It's a well-respected neighborhood. It's clean. And that shows that your ability to integrate yourself doesn't just affect you and your family, it's going to impact your community as well. And that we are communal creatures. No man is an island unto himself. So I think that is another message and another takeaway that we can that we can observe from the lessons of George McFly. All right, so what is the takeaway for the average father in the age of home-centered church from George McFly?
Well, I think that, I recommend that everyone watch the Back to the Future series, because I think it's iconic and amazing. But for also what the purposes that we're explaining here, I think you should review and reflect on how you lead your household, right? And how you can better follow Christ's example in being more integrated and being perhaps a little less agreeable, a little more honest, right? Because agreeability and honesty, there's a very fuzzy line between those two. I think that at the end of the day, kindness is helpful, niceness is not, right? I think there's a difference between those two. And to be honest with your family and yourself is a lot more kind. And so let's try and be a little less nice, a lot more kind, and embrace honesty and that masculinity that can lead your family.
That's right. So you could sell this as, a temple and family history learning night, like watching these movies. It's like, because there are some pretty powerful lessons that you could learn from your family history. Like your children need you to be the integrated man. That is one of the lessons that I take away from George. Is another interesting takeaway is like, if Biff represents toxic and dangerous ideologies of the world that can destroy families, then you see that the integrated man is the only one that can stand up and overcome those ideologies. And so that is the takeaway for me in the Age of Home-Centered Church is master your fears, become more courageous, become confident, establish boundaries, and lead out your family and watch the change happen. And you'll see your wife and your children will rally behind you, and you'll be able to overcome the toxic influences in your life.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's all we got for you today. So until next time, I'm Hayden Holm. This is Tanner. This is Salty Saints.